challenge him to single combat.
If you win, you'll have your freedom.
And when I see you, I'ma take what I want, so.
Amen.
Stephen Dunlevy, stunt coordinator for John Wick 4. How are you?
Good, man. Good. How are you doing?
Oh, man, I'm fantastic. I'm very excited to talk about this film. First, can you tell me, what is the role of a stunt coordinator on a film set?
That's a loaded question. Like on something like John Wick, so there's stunts and we coordinate them. No, the planning for a stunt takes place, in pre-production months before we even start shooting. We're talking to Chad, our director, about what he wants to achieve and how to achieve that. Then we have to talk to the DP, the director of photography, Kevin Cavanaugh, our production designer, about how we're going to achieve whatever stunts they are with a fight within a sequence. Because like back in the day, there's a lot of fights that didn't integrate the sets and the surroundings. The John Wick movies are all about integrating like found objects. So if we're in a library, we're fighting with books. There's bookshelves getting knocked over. We're using the geography of the room. So we start way back in production and in pre-production to design a fight or design a sequence around the geography of the location. And then we start building in. We start training our actors up. We start training our stunt people up. And we start designing a fight that looks good, that can be achieved on camera in the time that we have. And then talking to props about designing soft props. So like our nunchuck sequence, we were hitting people with those nunchucks. You can't hit people with solid wooden nunchucks. So then we've got to go through a design process of like designing a nunchuck that's going to hold up on camera, but then we can also soften up to hit people with and also look good on camera. The bows all had to be designed from scratch. They look like we could shoot with them, but then we could also interact. So it's a multi-stage process of what a stunt coordinator do. Finally, on the day, when we come to film, we're making sure that all those pieces are put together, talking to our stunt team like Jeremy Moranis, our fight coordinator, making sure all our guys are in place, that everything's good, everyone's warmed up, and that everything that we have planned is in place.
And now, so looking at some of the films that you've done previously, both as a stunt coordinator, as a stunt performer, Mad Max Fury Road, which was absolutely epic, John Wick 2, Jungle Cruise with Dwayne Johnson. How does the John Wick franchise compare from a stunt perspective?
It's taken everything. I think the John Wick franchise and what Chad has done with the franchise, it's taken action to another level when it comes to fights and choreography and the integration of the fights and storytelling. It was amazing being on Mad Max because like getting to work with George Miller. George wanted to do everything practically. Like, he didn't believe that special effects could take over, like to go back to that old school filming process, which Chad is very much in that same world. In terms of it's taken everything to the next level. So the action sequence is just action on action on action on action. Whereas, like somewhere like a Jungle Cruise or Jumanji or Mad Max, we had that pause for, dialogue, and we had that pause for storytelling. This, we're telling the story through the action. I think that is the biggest difference. The movie is constant action.
And now here's the toughest question of all. From your perspective, as a professional who's worked in this space for so long, I want you to count down your top 3 action sequences in John Wick Chapter 4. I've got my favorites. So let's start with number 3. What is your favorite?
Well, number 3 would be the top shot, top shot looking
in
down.
That would
in the chateau there. That would be. I mean, it's hard because that alone is a tentpole action piece for any other movie. But that would probably be that would be my number 3. The integration that had to be achieved for that with the because the camera is on 4D camera system, so it's going across, it's going down, it's moving around. That is computer controlled. So once we hit the button, everything goes, and everyone's got to be in the right place at the right time. So that all had to be coordinated
Wow.
weeks ahead of time to do that, and it all had to come together because you're seeing what it was fun to do because when we're using the dragon's breath shotgun
Those
ammunition.
incendiary rounds.
Yes, yeah, those like phosphorus rounds. It was an amazing way because traditional photography you don't get the scope of what that round can do and how fun it is. But you're seeing cause and effect. Normally you see what's happening with John Wick as he's dealing with someone, as someone's come to. Now you're seeing what John Wick's not seeing. You're seeing the people that are coming and trying to cut him off and attack him, and him having to make decisions about those people. So that was a lot of fun to film.
All right, number two.
Number two would be the stair sequence.
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
At the
Sacre-Cœur
Sacre-Cœur.
stair sequence. Yeah, that was an amazing sequence to film. That's 222 steps, and it was like, how many stair falls can we do? How many is it practical to do that's not completely over the top, but is also kind of over the top, and because everyone's going down, and then to build that sequence with going from the bottom and starting to build it up, so that it wasn't a complete, you weren't burnt out by the time you get to the top. And then of course we had Vincent Bouillon, our French stunt double. He was the guy, he practically fell down all 220 steps.
Wow.
Like everyone will see in the shot, there's a cable cam shot that we did, and that's him practically falling down. Then he gets picked up and thrown again, and he practically chipped against that light pole, hit the ground, and then rolled the rest of the steps as well.
And what happens to a stunt performer after they do something like that? Do they have some kind of lingering effect? Because we know, like, John Wick kind of shakes himself off and away he goes. Is it the same for a stunt performer?
It's the same with the stunt performer. I mean, the benefit of doing, like, with visual effects these days and things like that, we can pad stairs in places and we can put levels so they're not hitting the concrete all the time and things like that. And obviously we pre-plan it. For John Wick, he's in the moment there, he's getting thrown down those stairs, he doesn't get a choice. Our stunt performers can pad up, and the beauty of like gel pads these days, the thick dense gel, is that you get saved from some of those harder hits. Of course, you're always getting hit where the pad's not, so you have bumps and bruises, but you're also looking for a performer like that can do it. There are people that will put their hand up and be like, oh, I can do that, but there are very few people that can really do it and continuously do it. Vincent knew where he was in space at any given time, so you're protecting your head constantly. You're going in between the gaps in the stairs to protect your head, and falling over and knowing where that railing was and staying in those stairs is not an easy thing to do.
Such an amazing scene. The audience just lost their mind. Okay, so the number one action sequence in your perspective in John Wick Chapter 4.
The Arc de Triomphe sequence.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Chad came to Scott Rogers, the second unit director and supervising stunt coordinator, and myself, and he had this idea of just car hits. How many car hits can we do? Kind of like the Sacre-Cœur stair scene. How many stair falls can we do? How many car hits can we do? The beauty of that, and that is just cars, and it's a ballet of cars and fights and dog hits and action. So being able to do that safely again too was working with the team and working with Scott, who designed that sequence, was it's a combination of padded cars and real cars and CG cars that blend it all together seamlessly to just create mayhem.
Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers. And so were those car hits actually all stunt performers, or was any of it CG effects?
No, there's some cars in the background that are CG, but all of those car hits are stunt performers getting hit by cars, everything like that. So yeah, so some of them are real practical cars, and we'll pad again using with the benefit of visual effects, because Scott and myself are very obviously, we both came up as stunt performers. Chad was a stunt performer. So very cognizant of everyone going home safely. At the end of the day, you do something like that, as getting hit by a car is not a small thing. For an average person, you get hit by a car, you're going to hospital, you know. So we've got to get that person hit by a car, and then they have to get up and do it again like 3 or 4 times. So it's a combination of real cars that have some pads, and then designed a whole padded floor, like a gymnastics floor, with cars that were on hydraulics that would come in that were padded up, and people get hit by that. So everything was very controlled. We could control those sequences, and then we rely on the visual effects team to blend that seamlessly and to make the Arc de Triomphe, and to blend it all into one sequence.
Yeah, people who haven't seen the film are going to be so excited listening to this, and people who have are going to be fascinated by this insight. It's totally wild. And now let's talk about Mr. Wick himself, Keanu Reeves, who we know is such a screen legend. What is he like to work with from a stunts perspective?
He's a stunt coordinator's dream. He is determined, focused. He wants to do as much as possible. We can push the line between, like, Keanu does action and then steps out when it comes to stunts, but Keanu's dedication to training means that we can push that line of where an actor would normally step in, and we have the double doing fights. With Keanu, he's there. He's so with the car sequence, he's for those that haven't seen it, spoiler alert, but for those that have, that's Keanu driving along and drifting. He's drifting that Barracuda and picking up that gun practically in the street.
What?
Yeah, so we started training that. That's not an effect. It's not CG. It's not face replace or anything like that. That's Keanu Reeves drifting the 1970s Barracuda car with the door off and reaching out the door, picking up a gun off the street, and then driving off. He's doing all those reloads and things like that. So we started that training. Like, Scott took him out to the racetrack outside of LA in December of 2020. We didn't start shooting until late into 2021, so like about 6-7 months out. And then he's coming into 8711 each day, training for up to 8 hours a day with the judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and whatever other style. He had to learn nunchucks for this. He learned katana. And then obviously he's going out to Terran Tactical and doing all the weapons drills and weapon manipulation. With this one, we introduced the Genesis, the Gen 12 shotgun that has the dragon's breath. And we introduced him to a new pistol, the Pit Viper. So he has to learn all that muscle mechanics and memory, and then adapt that with the choreography. So he is a complete dream to work with.
Well, and talking about complete dreams from a stunt coordinator's perspective, we've got to talk about Donnie Yen, who, of course, Hong Kong martial arts expert and such a legend of Asian cinema, who makes a very, very welcome appearance in John Wick Chapter 4. Tell me about working with an actor like that who brings some of those martial arts skills to the table.
That brings you up. You have to, like, you hear you're working with Donnie Yen, and one, it's a dream, and two, it's like you're working with Donnie Yen, so my game has to be 100%. Yeah, there is like the pressure just goes up a notch. Keanu had set such a great gold standard for the actors in the film and their training and things like that, and Donnie brings in all these other ideas. Obviously, Donnie in his own right is an action master and a choreographer in his own right, and his adaptation of the Kane character just brought it to life. His ideas that he came with, like we came in with ideas, and we'd obviously, like, his character in it is blind, so we had researched and come up with fun ways. Obviously there's a blur, like you create a reality and then you kind of push that boundary of creativity with the world you create, like a blind man being able to fight with a sword and being able to shoot people. And so we had to come up with creative ways and practical ways that you could do that, you know. So he jumped into that role. He relished it. So it was amazing working with him with that.
Yeah, and Donnie's character is fantastic. I think, you know, the way that the film leans into him being blind and some of the ways that he finds to navigate his very, very dangerous world despite that impediment, I think are incredible. It's amazing to watch. And now you mentioned Chad, the director, Chad Stileski, former stuntman himself. How does that make things different for you, and working with a director who intimately understands how stunts are performed and how they can be captured on film?
It's amazing working with Chad in that respect, because when he's he's seen from the ground up everything that can kind of go wrong when a script is written without any idea of location, or just like they fight. It's like, okay. So when Chad is developing a character, when Chad's going to locations, all those locations Chad practically goes to beforehand. And he starts developing the action around those locations. So it's not like you get like a script that's written and then you get a location and then the director's like, I want him to do this. And it's three different completely impractical things that we have to kind of meld together. This one, it starts to seamlessly integrate as we're going. So when Chad's developing the characters, he's also thinking about the styles of fighting they're doing, obviously. And then when he's casting, we're looking for those kind of styles. He's looking at what those people can do when we get them. When we get an actor, we assess them, and you start to develop that style for them. But he's already got that kind of built into the script, so it makes our life a lot easier. It makes, and obviously he's pushing the action, so it makes our life a lot more fun with what he wants to do. It also makes our life. It escalates what we have to do because he's been there and he's done that and he is the gold standard. So we have to be top of our game. There's no rest when you're working with Chad.
Yeah, it looks like there's a lot of envelope pushing happening in the John Wick franchise. Watching all the John Wick films, as you say, you know, they've just really been special for the action sequences. Like, one thing I'm curious about though, right? Like the films have always done such a good job of creating the impression of those long continuous shots. And so what was the longest kind of single continuous scene or sequence that you had to coordinate?
Oh, well, that's a good one. I haven't got that one yet. That's a hard one. I mean, there were so many. We did 90 days of night shoots, so it all just becomes a blur.
90
days, 90 days of night shoots. It all just becomes this. You become a creature of the night, and just you kind of like you get to work, coffee. That's the longest continuous one. It would probably be something in the Arc de Triomphe sequence, because like the benefit of Keanu training so hard means that we can do all those shots, and then you have Hiroyuki Sanada and Donnie Yen that come in, and their ability to adapt choreography is insane. So, I mean, that's them fighting on that platform with the swords, and they're, for two gentlemen that are, you know, they're not 30 years old anymore. Their sword speed, their hand speed is phenomenal. And Keanu's the same. Like, Keanu's ability to adapt to choreography and to change it, because things change on the day. We have kind of plug and play choreography that we can go, okay, let's do this here. Like, you know, Jeremy's constantly, the way Jeremy Moranis, our fight coordinator, trained by Keanu and the guys, we can just plug and play with different choreography. Let's do this here. So Keanu's just, we'll run it with him once and then bang. But it's, you know, you're talking scenes that are a couple of minutes long of action, which is insanely, it's a lot, with cars going past and things like that. It's a lot. Yeah.
And then this is just my own benefit. Like, it's at the end of a day of shooting, is everybody just rooted?
Yeah. Everyone's tired. Everyone's exhausted. I remember the first movie, a long movie I did was Australia, and I was like, oh, like everyone just kind of goes home, and you know, I just like, you want to hang out on set as that young kid and everything like that. And now, you know, you're just like, and right, okay, boom, you're out. You know, it's exhausting. So like the Berlin, I mean, having seen the movie, there was no way to capture how big that nightclub was. Like, with the waterfalls going, and because there were real practical waterfalls going, everything like that. And there's water constantly. Every sequence had its thing. So like Berlin, Osaka, you know, we were fighting over multiple floors, and those guys, you've seen that footage. I mean, there's a viral thing going around, a German stunt guy going down the escalator falls. Yeah, doing the escalators. Check it out. Yeah, so like that's him practically going down. So we had to design that. But everyone, you're going up and down stairs, like the Arc de Triomphe sequence. You're going up 220 flights of stairs all day. You know, you're running around at the Arc de Triomphe sequence. You've got all that water, so you're physically and mentally just exhausted by the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's it, right? Because these films do such a great job of interacting with their environment. That's such a big part of it. Like you know, it's not just you're in a sound stage in front of a green screen, very controlled environment. You're out in nature where there's a lot of variables you need to be mindful of.
Yeah, it's always about, you know, especially filming at night in Europe, like as we were getting into the French section of it, you have, you know, the weather's starting to get cooler, so you've got to be very mindful about actors like staying warm enough, because you do a sequence and then we're relighting, doing things for different cameras. So an actor starts to cool down. That's when, you know, your biggest injuries occur. Someone pulls a muscle or something like that, and we can't afford it on those movies. It's same with our stunt performers. But then you're interacting with, you know, you've got steps and you've got wet cobblestones and you've got trees and you've got banisters and you've got the general public to deal with, because sometimes they want to come onto the set, and you know, we've had that before. And you've got all these different variables, and you're constantly going to be filming. There's so much to do that you're filming something, and we're like, you know, we've set something up, we're filming it, and we're already going on to that next scene. So like Jeremy and myself and the stunt team are going through the next sequence, so that the cameras can basically just pick up and move, and we're going on to that next sequence. So,
and how often does it happen where, you know, someone jabs one way and instead of dodging, the stunt performer goes the wrong way and they just kind of cop one right in the button? Is that the sort of thing that happens just on a daily basis on set?
definitely not on a daily basis. You know, the beauty, well, not with this one, the beauty of, you know, the working with Keanu is so spot on. And you know, it's drilled into the actors that if you forget something or anything like that, you stop. It's easier to stop and just go. Yeah, and you can sometimes tell, like having done it as well, there's a look in someone's eye, not just an actor but a stunt performer, when they kind of blank, and you're like, oh, I'm going to step back. Easier. It's a lot easier. Yeah, especially with our stunt performers, it's drilled into our stunt guys, because obviously everything's with Keanu. If someone falls the wrong way, if someone hits one of our actors, we go down, and obviously it's not a good optic. We don't like our actors with black eyes. Yeah, it's money, it's time that we don't have. So we drill it in as part of our training with the team to remember the choreography, and also if something doesn't feel right, it's easy to step away and we can do another take than for something to go completely wrong.
And you've been in this game for so long now, and going from being a stunt performer to your role now, like I'm thinking about like how you've seen the industry change, because you talk about pull muscles before, because the stunt performers really are elite athletes. Has there been like big improvements in the same way there is with professional sport in terms of sports science, recovery, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I came in at a transition period. I think like the coordinators before me and the coordinators before them, like as a coordinator, I get to stand on the shoulders of giants that went before on this amazing foundation. All the stunt coordinators that I came up under are limping or are missing fingers or something. You know, they were the guys. It's transitioned from the daredevils of the guys that are just like, hey, you know what's great? Hold my beer. Like, we'll jump a car over there. We don't know how we're gonna do it or where it's gonna land. We're gonna jump it, and yeah. It's gone from a little bit of those cowboy days, because I mean the stunts originally came from the cowboy movies. You know, it was you were grabbing rancans and things like that, and cowboys is like, hey, let's do a horse fall. Hey, get that guy to fall off a roof. We don't know how that works, but and those guys were the guys that had to go through the hard yards to develop it. These days, stunt performers are very much athletes, you know, so very focused on what they do. They're training like the team, the 87 guys and everything like that are in at 6 a.m. when we're not working, in at the shop at 6 a.m. in the morning, start training, everything like that, doing judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, working with different weapons and things like that, because they're constantly keeping up their skill level. They're constantly learning. It's not like you're sitting back and just waiting for the phone to call. Phone to ring. You've gone to that professional level, so the guys are very much aware of their of like cold baths and muscle deprivation and staying warm and looking after injuries. It's not just popping a couple of pills and, you know, having a swig of champagne and getting it done these days. Not to say that doesn't happen, but you know,
not as often, maybe.
No, it's not
And
like
so-
Hooper. You know, if anyone's ever seen Burt Reynolds in Hooper,
yeah,
you know, they'll know that reference. Yeah.
classic. And so, has the improvements in CG effects cost stunt performers jobs?
Yes and no. I think the problem with visual effects and computer generated like CGI stuff, for me still, and I know a lot of people I talk to, it pulls once it becomes so like, for instance, like a Spider-Man. You know, it's getting better, but it's twofold. For me, there's stuff that like I know, like I work with Tom Holland's doubles on Uncharted. Yeah. Uh, like Greg is an amazing actor. If anyone's seen Uncharted, that he comes like flying through the light fixture and everything like that. He practically chipped off that table and spins, knew where he was in the air at all times. Those his doubles are phenomenal. A human doing something, you're still interacting with that character. You still feel something for the character. It's still very obvious when it becomes a CG character. I know for me, it takes me out of that moment. It takes me away from that character. I'm not, it's like, oh, okay. There's no harm going to come to this person now because it's CG. But at the same time, it's enhanced stunts. It's allowing us to push those levels a little bit, and then CG can take over and help us kind of create a more interesting, more action sequence.
And is it like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where like Leonardo DiCaprio's character and his kind of stunt double Brad Pitt become buddies, become BFFs in real life? Does that happen?
It does, yeah. It does happen with you know, with certain actors. I mean, every actor is different. Some certain actors bond, you know, Hugh Jackman has taken his double. Like Hugh's amazing. He's taken his double on multiple movies. Jason Momoa is with his double. And they're just some of the actors that I've worked with and know of. But there are multiple actors that have, you know, I'm not saying they're living together, but you know, they're an actor. Ultimately, like it's a trust relationship. You know, so you're trusting that the actor is trusting that performer to play that character and to make it look good. And a coordinator, when I first started in the industry, a coordinator said, it's not like I don't look for the most talented person. I look for the personality, because essentially when you're going and working on a film, you're spending 6 months in a tent camping with someone. You know, so I want to know who I want to go camping with and hang out with on a day-to-day basis. And that person may be the most talented person in the world, but they're not great to hang out with. Well, you're working with them for 6 months, and so you know it becomes there becomes a bond between like certain actors and their doubles, and they just become like, some people bond and hang out and become great mates.
Yeah, man, it's been so awesome to talk to you today. I really appreciate all these insights. It's a thrill for me as someone who watches these movies to learn a bit more about the behind the scenes of how some of these incredible action sequences are shot. Stephen, thanks again for talking to me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Thank you. It was good hearing the Aussie accent again. It's like
Yeah.